Hi everyone, this is part 2 of my video in regards to my thoughts to Luigi Wife 1551's story Caretaker. So I've just read to you guys the part that I wanted to read. So, why did I decide to do this? Because this is something that really didn't just grab my attention in regards to the story. It really surprised me. It was honestly not even just a heartfelt moment throughout the chapter, but it also made me stop and think about what Ryder said in regards to the story. And I wanted to just read to you guys again the part of the chapter that just really took me aback. The first part being that Zuma felt like he wasn't as big a part of the team. That part definitely surprised me, but at the same time, I think fans of the show even feel like that at times, or at least have noticed that. But the one that really grabbed me, I'm just going to read to you guys again, was this. Ryder smiled and nodded. Yes, you do, even when you think you don't. You're never afraid to keep moving, and you actually inspire a lot more pups around you than you think. You sometimes inspire me sometimes. That part is what surprised me, but also this part too. But more importantly, you have a really calming energy, Zuma. You really are like the ocean. You tend to just go with the flow, and maybe that's what stopped you from knocking some sense into my hard head when I overworked myself. Knowing you figured that Chaser Marshall would have forced me to slow down before I went too far. That really surprised me. Because let's think about that for a moment. Think about it. Out of all the pups on the team, Marshall and Chase are always the ones called into action the most. Then again, it's understandable given the fact that they have separate jobs. However, when it comes to Zuma, he was able to recognize that he doesn't get as much attention as the other pups. And of course, this is something that many fans throughout the series have pinpointed. But to actually have this happen in a fanfic, I don't remember the last time we've ever heard of something like this. It may have happened with, say, some fanfictions in general, where they feel like they're not getting much attention and they're given more rescues. But to hear it from the characters themselves in a fanfiction, it just seems to add more depth to their character. What's even more interesting, however, is the fact that when Zuma was talking with Ryder, he mentions how he feels like his efforts, the work he does on the team, isn't nearly as good as Chase and Marshall. He feels as if he's letting the team down. He feels like because he doesn't get as many opportunities as those two, that he doesn't feel like he belongs. He feels like it doesn't matter how many water rescues he gets called on, how much of a help he is. Because in the end, if Chase and Marshall are the ones getting the most attention, why would he be on the team? Why should he be on the team? He feels like because he hasn't gotten much attention, not just with rescues, but as a pup in general, he feels like an outsider. He feels left out. He feels as if all the rescues he's done are not in any way a reflection of who he is as a pup, as well as the fact that his work, being that he gets called on very little in the fanfic, as well as you can make the argument for the show as well, Zuma feels in the fanfic that because he doesn't get as much attention as Chase and Marshall, or even, dare I say, even Sky and Rubble, he feels, but especially with Chase and Marshall, he feels like just because he doesn't get called on that much, it doesn't matter how much he's helpful. It doesn't matter how much he gets called on a rescue. The fact that he is given so little attention is telling him that why bother being on the team when others are not giving the attention you deserve? When you don't feel as important or as impactful as you believe you should be. The amount of rescues that Zuma has been on, same with Rocky, even in the show, are definitely not very much. Even with additional rescues for Everest and Tracker, and also including the new Mighty Pup twins, Ella and Tuck. What Zuma is saying makes perfect sense. To Zuma in the fanfic, he has noticed just how little attention he gets, not just for rescues, but the attention he gets in popularity, as well as just attention in general as a pup. So he feels like it doesn't matter how helpful he is, it doesn't matter how many rescues he's gone on. If he isn't being given the same amount of attention and credit that all the other pups are being given, why should he stay on the team when it feels like even when he's helpful, he's just looked down on? He feels as if all his efforts are being put to the side. He feels as if all the effort he does in his rescues and the attention he gets in general, as well as after rescues, or even in daily life, he just doesn't feel the same amount of compassion, importance, gratitude, of feeling like others truly appreciate him, not just for rescues, but also as a pup. Zuma feels as if he's just not being given the amount of attention that he feels like he deserves. And he's noticed that. And he had to point it out to Ryder in order for Ryder to understand what he was talking about. That because he doesn't get much attention, because he doesn't feel the same gratitude and love as the other pups, Zuma feels as though it doesn't matter how much of a help he is or how many rescues he's been on. If he's being given so little attention, why be on the team? Especially when his go-with-the-flow personality clashes with Chase's. And this makes sense. Chase is a police pup, and not only is the second in command, his personality is just staying in the moment in regards to the seriousness of a situation, but even trying to think ahead to, predict what could happen and try and prevent it from happening. But that's Chase's mindset. Zuma doesn't have that kind of mindset. For Chase, he's had to train himself or just naturally had the ability to think ahead in situations to make sure that things that could go bad and make the situation worse don't happen, or at least trying his best to avoid those. Whereas with Zuma, he doesn't have the ability to do so because he tends to go with the flow and stays in the moment. He tends to just focus on what's happening in the moment and doesn't really have the ability to even think of what could go wrong, or doesn't really know how to think of what could go wrong because there could be so many options. He doesn't have the ability to think of what could go wrong and, in a sense, stay ahead of the game. Chase does. Chase is able to think or predict in a way what could go wrong and therefore stay one step ahead of what's happening in the rescues. But Zuma doesn't do that. Zuma is only focused on what's happening in the present moment, what the team has to focus on in that moment in the rescue. And because there's so many options for what could go wrong, Zuma not only doesn't think about it because there's so many options in general that anything could just throw him off guard, but on top of that, he also doesn't have the ability to think ahead like that, because then all of a sudden there's too many ideas or too many situations that he has to think about, and all of a sudden his brain is going on overdrive. He's trying to think of different scenarios that could go wrong, and because he doesn't know what could go wrong, he doesn't know how to prepare for it. Why? Because he's only focused on what's happening in the moment as the situation is happening. Whether things go bad, whether they're dealing with the emergency, or even as they're helping to solve a rescue. He doesn't have the same mindset that Chase does. And so because of that, it's very easy to understand in the rescues for the story The Caretaker why they tend to get into arguments or disagreements. This really opened my eyes. But going back to what Ryder said, you're like the ocean. That right there really took me aback. And why do I point this out? Because that's Zuma's personality. Zuma's personality is he acts very much like the ocean. However, let's take it another step further. What about the other pups? What qualities do they have that fit with their own jobs? It's like Ryder said, Zuma's personality is like the ocean. So let's compare the other pups. Could this same idea be used with them? Could this have been the reason Ryder decided to put them in the team? Let's look into that. I will continue in part 3.